The world didn't end all at once in metro exodus. It faded, slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed. Not just in the destruction of cities, but in the way people began to think. Because when humanity retreated underground, it didn't just escape radiation, it escaped possibility itself. The tunnels became more than shelter. They became belief systems, limits, a version of reality people stopped questioning. And over time, survival replaced living. That's what makes Artyom different. Because while everyone else adapts to the dark, he remembers something they've forgotten. That life wasn't meant to be lived underground. That humanity wasn't built to hide. That somewhere out there, beyond the fear, beyond the radiation, there could still be something better. And that belief sounds irrational, dangerous even. But here's the thing, every meaningful change in life begins that way. Not with certainty, but with a quiet refusal to accept what everyone else has settled for. Because if you really think about it, we all live in some version of the metro, not underground, but inside routines we don't question, paths we didn't consciously choose, limits we inherited and never challenged. And just like the people in the tunnels, we tell ourselves, this is just how life is. But what if it isn't? What if that's just a version of reality you stopped questioning? So in this video, we are not just talking about a game, we are breaking down 5 rules, 5 shifts in mindset that can pull you out of your own tunnel and set you on a path towards something more, something intentional, something alive. So step aboard the Aurora and let's begin the journey.
So, you guys ready to set off? Too late if you're not, we have no time to waste.
Rule number 1. Choose hope, even when it feels irrational.
People need you, and you pursue your selfish obsession. But now this shit has to stop! There's only Metro, nothing else. And the Order is here to defend it. Because if not us, then who?
Before the journey, before the Aurora, before any sign that the world could be different, there was just the surface, silent, poisoned, abandoned. And Artyom kept returning to it, not because it was safe, but because it meant something. He remembers a time most people have forgotten, a world where humanity didn't hide underground. It built upward, cities of glass and steel, skies filled with movement, 7 billion lives connected by possibility. And now, 50,000 survivors buried in tunnels, told that this is all that remains. Over time, that belief became reality. Not because it was proven, but because it was accepted. The Metro didn't just protect people, it reshaped them, lowered expectations, narrowed perspective, turned survival into the only goal. But Artyom couldn't accept it, even when others called him reckless, even when it cost him safety, even when every trip to the surface felt like chasing a ghost. He kept going, because somewhere deep down, he refused to believe that humanity's story ended in the dark. And then one day, through the static, through the silence, he hears it, a signal, faint, fragile, almost impossible, but real. And in that moment, hope stops being an idea. It becomes a direction.
Regardless, we can't afford to lose hope. We are getting ever closer to our dream. Finding a place where we could live, free from radiation and mutants.
Hope isn't something the world gives you. It's something you decide to keep. And most people don't lose hope dramatically. They lose it quietly. They trade it for certainty, for routine, for a version of life that feels manageable but small. They stop asking questions like, what else is possible? Is this really all there is? And instead, they settle into answers that require less effort. That's just how life works. This is realistic. It's too late to change. But what if realistic isn't truth? What if it's just repetition? A belief you've heard enough times that it feels unquestionable. Artyom's persistence challenges that. Because he doesn't move forward with guarantees, he moves forward with belief. And belief doesn't need certainty. It needs willingness. Willingness to question what you've accepted. Willingness to step outside what's familiar. the willingness to look for something, even when there is no proof it exists yet. That's what makes hope powerful. It creates movement before clarity. And in real life, that's often the missing piece. People wait to feel ready before they act. But readiness rarely comes first. Action does. The moment you choose hope, genuinely choose it, you begin to shift direction. You start noticing opportunities you previously ignored. You start asking better questions. You start moving, even if it's uncertain.
The journey won't be easy though. We were never looking for an easy way.
And slowly, the world expands again. So the question isn't whether hope is realistic. The question is, what happens to your life when you stop choosing it? Because the moment you stop believing something better exists, you stop moving toward it. And when you stop moving, life doesn't collapse all at once. It quietly shrinks until one day, what once felt temporary becomes permanent. That's what Artyom refused to accept. And sometimes, even the smallest signal is enough to remind you there's still more out there.
So I kept dreaming about how good it would be to just leave the metro and work on a real railroad. And travel around Russia, not to run in circles like a rat in a maze.
Rule number 2. Make the most of what you have while you still can. On the Aurora, nothing is wasted. Not time, not resources, not opportunity. Everything has a purpose. Everything gets used. Because out here, there is no excess, no backup plan, no guarantee that what you have today will still be there tomorrow. So when they manage to piece together protective suits, just enough for 2 people, there is no frustration, no complaints about what's missing, only a quiet acceptance. This is what we have, and it will have to be enough.
Therefore, Artyom and me, it's fate, that's what it is. Better than nothing. Don't worry, we'll make do. Always have.
That mindset isn't optimism, it's survival. They repair what's broken, reuse what others would discard, adapt constantly to whatever situation they are thrown into. And even when conversations turn toward mortality, toward the reality that none of them are promised time, there is no denial.
It worked out, it really did. My concern is what if next time it doesn't? Of course not. All the more reason to strive and spend more time of what is allotted to me with that guy over there. I've grown attached to him.
Because when you live in a world like this, you don't assume you get another chance. You act on the one you have.
So, Artyom, here's your chance. Our last chance to save Anna. We must make it count.
There's a quiet trap that exists in modern life. It sounds reasonable, it feels responsible, and it keeps people stuck for years. I'll start when I have more time, more money, more clarity, more confidence. But what that mindset really does is push action into a future that never fully arrives. Because there's always something missing, something that could be better, something that makes now feel not quite right. But the truth is, conditions are rarely perfect, and waiting for them doesn't prepare you, it delays you. And the longer you delay, the more intimidating it becomes to begin. Because hesitation compounds. What starts as "I'll do it later" slowly turns into "maybe this isn't for me," until eventually you convince yourself you never wanted it at all. The Aurora crew doesn't wait for ideal. They work with what's real, and that's what creates progress. In your own life, you already have more than you think. Not everything, but enough. Enough to begin, enough to take a step, enough to create momentum. The problem isn't always lack, it's hesitation. It's underestimating what you can do with what's already in front of you. And there's something else the game subtly reinforces. Time isn't just limited, it's uncertain. You don't always get the next time. Not for opportunities, not for conversations, not for the things you keep telling yourself you'll do later. That awareness isn't meant to pressure you. It's meant to focus you. Because when you understand that your time has weight, you start using it differently. You become less passive, less hesitant, less willing to postpone what matters. So instead of asking, is this enough to succeed? Start asking, is this enough to begin? Because most of the time, that's all you actually need. Rule number 3. Don't let your identity become your cage.
You know, Sam, you have things to do there, but the old man, he's only a colonel in the metro, really. There he controlled the order, enjoyed universal respect. But what would he do in America, huh?
Yamanta was supposed to restore order, a place where the old world still existed, where structure remained intact, where leadership still had meaning. For Colonel Miller, this wasn't just a destination, it was validation, proof that everything he believed in, rank, duty, loyalty, still mattered. So when they arrive, he steps forward without hesitation, because in his mind, this is where things finally make sense again. But what they find instead is something unrecognizable, twisted, broken, a system that didn't survive the collapse. It adapted to it in the worst possible way. There is no leadership, no salvation, only people who surrendered their freedom and became something else entirely. And in that moment, Miller is forced to confront something far more unsettling than the outside world. The possibility that everything he built his identity on no longer holds meaning. Later, when he reflects on it, there is no denial, no justification, just honesty. He wasn't just committed, he was afraid to let go of the structure that defined him, afraid to exist outside of it, afraid of who he might be without it.
Just have to say, you were right, Artyom. Right for wanting to get us out, bring us here. And I, the old fool, I was simply afraid. Afraid of life, as I see now. This world is worth giving everything up for, Artyom. You were always ready, and I was too attached to my position in the rat race. I'm sorry. Sorry for what happened to Anna. Sorry for blaming you.
Identity gives you stability. It answers the question, who am I? But over time, it can also prevent you from asking a more important one, who am I becoming? Because once you attach yourself to a role, a career, a title, a path, it becomes harder to step away from it, even when it no longer fits, even when it no longer fulfills you, even when you know something needs to change. You stay, not because it's right, but because it's familiar, because letting go feels like losing progress, like starting over, like stepping into uncertainty. And most people would rather stay in something that no longer serves them than face the discomfort of redefining themselves. Miller's realization doesn't just challenge that illusion, it exposes it, because loyalty isn't always a strength. Sometimes it's just fear in disguise, especially when it's directed towards something that no longer deserves it. In real life, this shows up in subtle ways. You continue a path because you've invested too much to leave. You chase validation because it's what you've always done. You measure success based on expectations you never consciously chose. And slowly, you become disconnected from yourself. The solution isn't to reject identity entirely. It's to loosen your grip on it, to see it as something flexible, evolving, something that can change as you do. Because growth requires space, and space only exists when you're willing to let go of what no longer fits. So instead of asking, who have I been? Ask, is this still who I want to be? Because sometimes the hardest step forward is releasing the version of yourself that can't come with you. Rule number 4. Move toward destination, but don't miss your life along the way. Not every moment on the Aurora is survival. Sometimes there is stillness, moments where the danger fades just enough for people to be human again, to talk, to reflect, to remember what life felt like before everything changed. And in one of those moments, Anna begins to question something deeper. Her father, his life, his purpose. She's seen his strength, his discipline, his unwavering sense of duty. But when she looks closer, she realizes something is missing. She doesn't actually know what makes him happy, what he's been moving toward all this time.
I was always intrigued by what Dad dreams about. He should have some dreams, but what are they? Higher rank? He could choose any. Saving people? What would the saved do next? Sit underground? I never understood him. What does he hope for in life? What makes him happy? Nothing, perhaps. He never really had any time to think about tomorrow. Down in the metro, those thoughts don't come casually.
And then she says something simple but profound.
That harbor is our destination. Worth going there even if we have half the world to cross. Everyone should have a destination. A point on the map where they aspire to go, and where one could finally be happy. All our guys have their own.
Everyone needs a destination, a place to aim for, a point on the map that gives direction to everything else. For them, it's the harbor, a place where they can finally stop surviving and start living again. But as the journey unfolds, it becomes clear that the destination isn't the only thing that matters. It's the moments in between, the conversations, the connection, the slow rebuilding of meaning in a world that almost forgot it. Having a destination matters. Without it, you drift. You react instead of choose. You move but without intention. But there is a hidden cost to being too focused on where you're going. You start postponing your life, telling yourself that meaning exists somewhere ahead, that happiness is waiting at the finish line, that everything will make sense once you arrive. But life doesn't work that way, because the destination keeps moving. There's always another goal, another milestone, another version of enough. And if you're not careful, you spend your entire life chasing something without ever fully experiencing it. The overall's journey reminds us of something easy to forget. Meaning isn't something you arrive at. Because if you only allow yourself to feel fulfilled at the destination, you train your mind to ignore your life as it's happening. And over time, that creates a strange disconnect, where you're always moving forward but never actually arriving. It's something you build while you're on the way, in the effort, in the growth, in the small moments that don't seem important at the time, but become everything when you look back. That doesn't mean you stop striving. It means you stay present while you do. You allow yourself to experience the process, not just endure it. Because one day, you'll reach a point where you pause and look back, and what you'll see won't just be where you ended up. You'll see how you got there, who you became, what you experienced, and whether or not you were actually there for it. So keep moving forward, keep aiming for something meaningful, but don't forget to live in the space between where you are and where you are going, because that space, that's your life. Rule number 5. When the moment comes, step forward and lead.
The tunnels. This is just like back home. We're in our element here.
The Dead City isn't just another stop on the journey. It's the final test. The air is thick with radiation. Every step feels heavier than the last. Even breathing becomes a conscious effort. This isn't survival anymore. This is sacrifice.
Come on, let's go. We have to move or we're done for.
Artyom pushes forward through the wounds, not because he's the strongest, not because he's fearless, but because there's no one else who can do what needs to be done. Behind him is everything he cares about: Anna, the crew, the fragile future they've been chasing across a broken road, and in front of him, only uncertainty. Then comes the moment that defines everything. Miller, once the unshakable leader, the man of rank, order, and command, makes a choice, not as a colonel, not as a superior, but as a human being. He gives Artyom the last dose, knowing exactly what it means, knowing there's no coming back from it. And in that decision, everything shifts, because true leadership reveals itself not in control, but in what you're willing to give up.
It is better, I wonder. Life built on a lie, or death born out of truth.
Later, in a quiet, fading moment between life and death, Miller passes something on, not an order, not a command, but a responsibility, a legacy.
My time's up, Artyom. It's your turn now. Step up, lead them. Just remember that I created the Order to save people. All people, Artyom. Don't forget that. Because I somehow did. Goodbye, Commander. Time to wake up. Come on. Rise and shine, son.
And just like that, the weight transfers. The mission doesn't end, it changes hands.
I would say we all go home. But this home seems too large for just us. You know, the Colonel once told me, he created the Order to save people. All of them. I say it's time we perform this duty.
Metro Exodus isn't just a story about surviving a broken world. It's a story about refusing to become part of it, about holding on to hope when it feels irrational, using what you have before it slips away, letting go of identities that no longer serve you, finding meaning in the journey, not just the destination, and stepping forward when the moment demands it. Because in the end, your life isn't defined by the world you're given. It's defined by how long you're willing to question it, how far you're willing to go beyond it, and whether you have the courage to believe there's something more. So keep moving, keep questioning, keep choosing something better, even when it feels uncertain, because somewhere out there, beyond everything you've accepted as normal, your version of the service still exists. And just like Artyom, you won't find it unless you go looking. Stay inspired, and I'll see you on the service. Thank you for watching.